Okay guys, Saturday the 11th of November and we are on the S&P 500. So let's have a quick recap of this market from last week in relation to our Sunday analysis. Then we'll have a look at the market for the trading week ahead before we move on to the NASDAQ. Okay, so on the S&P 500, what I've done is I've kept the sloping trend lines on the chart. That upper sloping resistance line is the main one we were going over last week. I've actually still got the rectangles on the chart from how we identified it. We had the test here, the test here, the test up at these levels here. And then as the market has started to press up into those levels, what we went over last week was we could look for potential resistance, weakness, and the bears stepping in at this level. And you can see we drove up on Monday. Tuesday, the bears stepped in. We drove back up on Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday, the bears stepped in a lot stronger and drove the market all the way back down to that sloping support line. We've been going over this for the past couple of weeks. This would be the central band of that sloping support and resistance lines we have been looking at. We can see the previous touches, one here, slicing straight through as the market is tested back in June. And then we had tests on the 17th of April and also the 18th of May. So what we also went over last week was how if we seen resistance at these levels, we could look for the pullbacks into potential support right at this area. So what we'd be looking for would be the resistance up at that sloping resistance line, the market being driven back down into key support, and this would be a good area to look for the bulls stepping back in, trying to continue this strong bullish trend that we've been having on the S&P. So Monday, we drove off of the levels. Tuesday, we came back down. Wednesday, we drove off of the levels. And then Thursday and Friday, we had that much stronger bearish movement off of sloping resistance. Okay, so for next week, well, the first thing is this sloping support and resistance line, the trend line, is still important. What we can also do is add in the previous, so the closes and the highs from Monday to Thursday of last week. It's giving us the clues. This is an area where the bears are interested right here. So this remains a good level of resistance to look for that weakness. Now, if the market does start to press up into this level, usually what I'd be looking at with a sloping resistance line up above like this would be a break up above, then the pullback. So basically resistance failing and then potentially holding as support. I would then usually look for a move back up toward that sloping resistance. However, just up above this area of resistance, we have the round number 26. Now, this is also likely to act as an area of potential resistance. You know, the round numbers, psychologically, they are important in markets, tend to be areas where lots of people look to execute trades and people set orders at these levels. So because of that, I'm a little bit less keen to buy on breaks above this level. Or if we did break up above, I'd certainly be watching at that 2.6 level for failures. Okay, so this is the key resistance level. Now, as we come back down, we can see the market is giving us a couple of clues as to the levels of support. What we can see is the market is driven up in a very, very strong movement. And really, for me, the very key levels of support don't start to come back in until we get down to 2,480 up towards sort of 2.5. So, you know, it's about 100 points on the S&P. So we've only really got this level of price action to work with because we are up at all-time highs. So the market hasn't traded up here before. We are looking for our evidence on the most recent levels of price action. Key resistance. Actually taking this down just a little bit. Really up into here. Key level of support. It's already been tested a couple of times very strongly on the Thursday the 19th and Wednesday the 25th of October. Happy to look for that support. If we start to break down below this level, we've been going over this also. Good area to look for that potential resistance. I'd then be expecting a stronger correction on the S&P down toward, you know, at least 2,510 and likely all the way back down into 2,500. It's quite far away at present, but it's always worthwhile having these things on your charts. Longer term views, you know, if we did start to fail here, it would definitely be giving us the clue that potentially the S&P is coming for that stronger correction. So down below there, we have, really it's down into this level, up towards around about here. So what I'm looking at is the tests right here. So we spiked down very strongly here and then drove higher. However, then on Thursday, when we tried to break up, we failed at this upper band. On Friday, we pressed back down again. Before we found that bullish sentiment, we then pulled back to retest at this band. Thursday, we pressed back to test. And then Thursday of last week, we also pressed back down into this level to test again. So it's giving us the clue that this, again, is a potential level of support and worthwhile watching next week. Now, the other level is the level that we went over last week. So here, up to round about, what we can do is I've just lifted it up ever so slightly. Actually, I'm going to lift this one also, just that little bit. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the previous level of resistance, we break up, we come back down, we fail at this level of resistance. Then as we start to break up above, this is where we were looking last week. So around about 2585 to 2575, again, important level of support. Also, if we break down below this level of support, we'd potentially be breaking below that sloping support line. You keep your eye on this next week. Great area to then look for resistance and a move back down toward around about 2570 to 2560. Okay, so those are the main areas on the S&P for me coming into next week. What I'm going to do now is have a quick coffee and then I will load up the NASDAQ and we will do the exact same thing for that market. Okay guys, so for the NASDAQ, so we've got the trusty cup of coffee to help us on the early Saturday mornings. Now this market, it only really tested one of our areas from last week. Now what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to put in the ascending triangle that we've been going over for the last couple of weeks, just purely because the market has pulled away from those key levels and there's not much point of having it on the charts at present. If we do start to break back down, we'll definitely start looking at those key levels once again. So from last week, we just had that potential level of support. Actually, this was a little bit lower, I believe. It was down toward these levels right here. Let's just mark this in. And then what happened was the market pressed higher going into last week. And we had that pullback and retested at this level of support. Now, what we also went over were the round number areas. So the 6300, then 6350, 6400. We went over how, I can't remember if this was in the US index breakdowns or if we did it in the FTSE 100 review. But basically, when we're up at all-time highs, if there's not a lot of information for us to use, we can start looking at things like round numbers. So 6,300, 6,350, 6,400, etc., and just continue on in that way. But just because they are psychological levels, you tend to find that people look to set orders at these areas. So 6,350, you can see the market pressed up, found resistance there, very strong move back down. Where did it test? At our key area of support. So coming into next week, what we can see is the market has been bouncing up along a relatively sharp sloping support line. Even on the Thursday, when we tried to break down, we tested this level, we popped back up and closed up above this level. So the market has given us a little bit of a clue for potential resistance up at around about 6,350. Worthwhile watching at this area moving into next week, especially if we do see the market pressing up and it's also testing around about this sloping resistance line, and because potentially we are seeing the market just sitting below it at present, it becomes just a little added confluence to look for that bearish momentum in the NASDAQ. Now if we do start to break up above this level, again, worthwhile looking for potential support on the pullback in toward these previous highs. Again, if it's lining up with that sloping support line, it's not a major sloping support line as yet, but we have been respecting it all last week. And if you actually extend it, you can see it's coming in, testing at this level here. If we break through, it'll come down and test down here also. Make it a little bit bigger. So key resistance, key support remains down at this level. And then really, we do have a minor level of support just sitting here. So this would really be the central point. We've spiked up on the 1st of November to test. On the 7th of November, just sitting at the top bands. Wednesday, we opened at the level. Thursday, closed just sitting up above the level. And then on Friday, we tried to break down, just hit the lower band, press back up, and we're just sitting at the top of this area. But for me, really, this is the key level, and this is the key level moving into next week. If we do see that breakdown, this becomes a good area to look for that potential support. Resistance, if we break up above again, a good area to look for that potential support. Now, if you start breaking down below this level, you can just bring it down a little bit now to incorporate that spike down right here on the 9th of November. Really then the next level of support and resistance would be down at this area toward 6,230. But really, if we do start breaking down below this level now, I'd expect to see around about 6,210 down to around about 6,190 where we tested previously. And what is right in between those levels, the round number 6,200. This is what I'm talking about. Very often you're going to see round numbers. You know, it doesn't have to be the exact number, but round about those areas, very often you will find support and resistance. So the main areas, resistance, if we break above potential support, a little bit more of a minor level coming into next week here, but still worthwhile looking for support and resistance. Down below at 6,260 to around about 6,245. Key support, if we did break down below, happy to look for those moves down into 6,230 and potentially down toward that 6,200 tag. Okay guys, so that is everything for this week. As always, I hope you found that useful. I hope you all have a good trading week next week. I'm James Orr, and thank you.